right, well, Joe, welcome. You are hands down one of the best traders. Actually, I believe the best, most successful trader that we've had so far at Lark Funding. I'm very, very excited to chat with you. So feel free to, take a couple minutes, introduce yourself. Really, we're here to hear about your trading journey, how you got here, and maybe a few tips that can help other traders.
Yeah, no, for sure, Matt. It's awesome meeting you, man. So I started about, let's say 3 years ago, during the whole COVID first run up. I actually got started with like crypto. I think a lot of people did, honestly.
Definitely.
Kind of got it. Yeah, and kind of got it late. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like I think most people did, right? So, after just like having a lot of dumb luck early on in like April and like March, and
everything was going up.
Yeah, dude, it was just parabolic, right? And you're just watching everything go up, and you feel like anything you buy was just gold, and it didn't matter. We're just going to keep going up. So, and then May happened, right? And then I was like, oh man, what just happened? And now I'm trying to figure out how I just lost this, big pile of cash that I was sitting on, and it was just growing every day. So, at the time I was in like a couple of like Telegram groups and things like that, and kind of just like bounce some ideas off of other people, like, what were they studying? What were they learning? How do they approach or engage price, So, I actually got started with just, traditional technical analysis, right? Which is fine, right? Like I was using MACD, moving averages, RSIs, stochastics, the stuff you learn, the classic technicals, right? And this guy was actually really good. He became a very good friend of mine. I still talk to him, even now. And I bounce ideas off of him, I stuck with that for a little while. And during that process, I was, still learning, obviously, and still getting my teeth smashed in. And I'm like, is it the technicals, or is it just me just being new? And there is that learning curve, man. Like trading isn't easy, right? It's not something anyone could just pick up and just one day become profitable unless you're in one of those wild bull markets. So, after sticking with that for a little while and not really having the best of experiences, I did what probably most new traders do. I start jumping around, you know what I mean? I think that's where a lot of people get twisted. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's, it's just, you strategy hop from one to the next. You're like, oh, the MACD works great, but let me try out this Keltner channel. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
So and you get like too much stuff on your chart, and it becomes like analysis paralysis, right? You're just like overloaded with junk, and you're like, man, like there's got to be something simpler, like something that's precise and like just easy to get. You know what I mean? And easy to grab onto. And ICT, I'm going to be honest, was not it when I first started learning ICT, right? So what interested me though, man, was I stumbled across somebody on Twitter, and they're calling out these levels on Bitcoin at the time. And I'm like, how the hell is this guy doing this? Like the precision was like uncanny, man. So I'm like, I started jumping in down that rabbit hole, right? And once I got in, I never really came out. And that was about 1.5 years, 2 years ago now, just studying ICT stuff. And that was probably, honestly, at the time, probably a bad decision. I should have just stuck with what I was doing, and I probably would have been on my way within like 6 months to a year, right? But I just, my system taught me. But
totally,
but when I saw the precision, I was like drawn into it. So I was like, all right, I'll absorb the loss of time spent learning, these other things, and just invest my time into this. And I'm okay with that at this point. So I just white knuckled down and I stuck with it. And I wasn't like, I'm not going to system hop again. I'm going to stay with this, and I want to learn it because I'm really intrigued, and I kind of started with the 2022 mentorship from ICT. And from there, I just kind of snowballed and wanted to learn more and learn more. And it just kept going and going and going. So that process was difficult too. I mean, like Matt, I'm sure you see it with statistics of other traders, man. Like I started way too early trying prop run challenges. I was starting back in October of last year, and I was getting destroyed. And you know what I do? I get destroyed, and I buy another challenge, and I do it again and again and again. And looking back on it now in hindsight, it was a stupid thing to do, right? I should have just stuck on paper, stayed on, demo, and I would have been fine. Like, and just take the baby steps. But you don't want to rush it. You want to rush it. You want to feel something. You want that dopamine hit. You want the big wins, And that's just not the right way to approach it. Yeah, it's not the right way to approach this stuff, man.
Yeah, I totally agree. We see that all the time. And no, please continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, all good, man. So just after that process, man, again, like my teeth smashed things like repeatedly, and still like coming back and begging for more. I was my own worst enemy, man. Like to the point where it was like interfering with my own personal life, my marriage and things like that. I was in a really dark place, man, at the end of last year. Like I really was, and I'm not afraid to share it. I think a lot of people need to hear it. But I was just not in a good headspace, and I shouldn't have been doing what I was doing, but I was doing it anyways, because I just wanted to steal something. When you're so empty, you just feel like you need something, and you're using trading. You're not using it to your advantage. You're using it kind of just to satisfy a short-term rush or something, right? And it wasn't until like January or February where I just kind of chilled out a little bit with that, and I was like, I gotta stop, because for one, I'm getting destroyed financially, and for two, I gotta just figure this out before I start throwing more money at the market and losing it. So 100%. I think January, in January I passed my first challenge with my Forex fund. I'd gotten that account. I was so excited. I had it for all of a day, 2 days, and then what did I do?
Heartbreaking.
Dude, soul crushing, right? And I'm like, dude, why? Like I was this close, like you feel like you're finally at the breaking point where you're just gonna break through, and it just slips right through your fingers. And I'm like, damn. So instead of rushing back into it again, learning what I learned previously, I was like, let me take some more time off. I'll go back to demo trading. I'm fine with that. And I just kind of really knuckled down. I'd say like late winter, like spring of this year. And I just dedicated all my time and energy and effort into, tape reading, building my model, and back testing it and forward testing it, and just doing that over and over and over again through repetition. And the thing is, I won't say back tested a lot. I prefer more forward testing personally. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I like to forward test more. And I think you get a lot more engagement of price just by watching it in real time. Because when you go backwards in time, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, I would have bought it here, right? Because you already know what's 100%. So it's like, you're kind of, I don't want to say you're doing yourself a disservice, but it's good for like just figuring out if that system is good from an RR standpoint, but not necessarily for like the sake of your benefit of reading price. So like, that's the only reason why I would use it. Once I'm finding my model, I'm like, all right, let me just test it and see if it, what the win rate is on this. If I use it enough, if it's actually valid, right? Like I'm still forward testing every day, not hitting buttons. I'm just watching price and then seeing my model play out daily and, engaging it on a demo account on paper. So after doing that for like 2 months, 3 months, and just really honing in on ICT's market maker buy and sell models, and studying some more advanced stuff in the core content, they finally started clicking. You know what I mean? And I think it was around May or June, I passed another challenge on, passed a few on Apex, even got a few payouts, passed one on my funded FX, I believe, got a few payouts there, but nothing substantial. And every time it was a quick fizzle out within and the most I can get is one payout. And then I just fizzled. And it just kept doing that. And, it was more like, it was just kind of like baby steps of just, going through that process of like having the account, holding it, getting to the payday, and then losing it the second time. So it was just like every time though I was going a little bit longer. I was able to get a little more consistent and a little bit more and a little bit more. So I just kept kind of building upon that. And that kind of helped like my own mentals of just like feeling like, okay, like I'm getting a hang of this. It's not like I'm just losing it, spinning out of control. But a lot of it was just risk management. And I was just coming down to, knowing your own inner demons and where you make mistakes, and things like that. So
totally. I was gonna. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that was kind of like my journey, up until I'd say summertime of this year, where I really started, like things just started clicking really good for me. Really started picking it up and get a hang of things, But it's a process, man.
Absolutely. It's definitely a process. And I think your story is going to be so much more valuable for the majority of traders, because online, as every trader knows, we're sold this idea that trading is easy, right? You're only just a few trades away from making money, or one course away from signing up and being successful. And so the fact that you had to go through so many ups and downs is that much more motivating. Right when you got that first funded account, you think, that's it, I made it, it's going to be smooth sailing from here on out. But that was just kind of, scratching the surface. There was still a lot more things that you had to go through. So I think your story as a whole is going to be really motivational for traders. But I want to go back to that first funded account that you said you passed with My Forex Funds. You think you're ready to go, years of working toward this, and then you lose it. What was it that made you lose that account in just 1 to 2 days? Do you feel in hindsight that you passed because you got a little bit lucky, you weren't quite ready yet, or did everything actually go legitimately well during the evaluation phase and then you changed things once you actually got funded?
Oh, it was definitely luck, man. There's no way in my mind, because I didn't have a model at that time. I didn't have like criteria to enter a trade. It was just like, oh, this looks good. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'll enter here. So it was more luck. Because you need to have that model, man. Like, you gotta have rules. Like every successful trader I know, man, they have a rule-based system. Like, you have to hit A, B, C, D, and Y. Otherwise they won't take the trade. You know what I mean? Like, it has to meet this criteria, and if not, they sit on their hands. And that was the hardest part for me, man. It's just sitting on my hands and being patient. Because let's be honest, man, when you're looking at price, you're kind of just like, especially when we're in a lower time frame, there's a lot of stuff that looks pretty good, right? But if you're not in sync with everything that's happening from the high time frame down to the low time frame, then you're going to be easily caught off guard and maybe take something that looks like maybe a market structure shift on like a 3 minute or a 1 minute, and then get smoked, right? Because you're just looking at a small fractal in price that's part of a larger move. And that process, man, of figuring that out, I think that's what really helped me, was syncing together all the time frames. But at the time, on that first challenge, I had no model. I had no basis. It was just, well, I'm looking for a liquidity rate, and once the liquidity rate takes place, I'm going to enter it on that first FVG. But there's no other basis behind it. Like, there's no high time frame analysis attached to it. There's no draw on liquidity attached to it. It's just kind of random, right? So without having that criteria met, it was just luck, dude. Like, looking back on it, it was flat out luck. I mean, that's all it was. I know it was.
And moving forward to the evaluations that you've taken now that you're getting more consistent with in terms of payouts, you mentioned you get 2 payouts, 3 payouts, and then you'll breach the account. Do you think that now is the result of you making the same type of errors? You find that consistency, second, third payout, and then you fall into old habits, or is it a different reason that that's happening?
I think personally, I think it's more of a mind. Yeah, I think it's a mind game. It's like, you get to that next ladder rung up, and you're like, okay, I made it higher. Like, I'm here, and you're like, I'm almost at the top, and then you just like, oh, screw it, I blew it. You know what I mean? And you're just not paying attention, because you're too concerned about getting to the next ladder rung. Like, I gotta get to the next payout. So this way I could say, look, I made it to 4 payouts. I made it to 5 or 6, or I held the account for 3 months or 4 months or 6 months or a year, like, so
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is just the mental aspect, because, trading is all mental, man. And it's so easy to fall back on bad habits, that are just, it's so easy to develop bad habits, and it's easy to fall back on those too, like, to the point where you're your own worst enemy. I mean, a good friend of mine on Twitter, her Twitter bio is, it's you versus time. And I agree with that like 100%. It really is. You're your own worst enemy. Every day you press the button, every day you're looking at the chart, every day you get up, your whatever analysis or whatever, it's you versus you, and then the time that it takes to get to the level where you can be confident enough to, execute and then hold that position, or, manage the trade properly, and not make those big mistakes, and it's easy to go on chill, and like recognizing like, hey man, I gotta chill out today. Like, I've already traded X amount of times. That's really, I know once I get above X amount of trades, like, my win rate just drops to the roof, and then I start doing stuff that things get out of control. That's just like knowing your own self. Like, no one can teach you that.
Absolutely. Sometimes the best trade is no trade. And I think it's good to remind yourself of that. And I think too, perspective can be, at least it was the case in my trading journey, having perspective can be such a powerful tool, because, we've shared your payouts a fair bit. It's very motivating. Just over $30,000 that you received in payouts. The average US salary is $59,000. So to receive half of that in a few weeks is absolutely incredible. And I bring it up because I'm sure if you were to tell your former self 2 years ago, hey, how would you feel if you received this amount in payouts in 3 weeks? I'm sure you'd be over the moon. I'm sure anybody would be over the moon. But once you get to that third payout, you want the fourth, right? You lose that perspective. You're seeking the fifth, and then you fall back into those bad habits. And so I think having that perspective and always doing your best to remind yourself of how far you've come, and say, things are going well, don't change anything, just keep doing the same thing. I think that's a really powerful lesson for traders.
Dude, absolutely, man. It's, you got to keep your eyes on the prize. Like so easy as, like you said, like, just get caught up in short-term goals. Like, you set the bar too high for yourself, looking for that next ring up on the ladder. And it's like, you know what, you'll probably get there, buddy, but just, maybe step back a little bit. Maybe think about what you're doing. I think that's every trader's obstacle, because I must be honest, man, there's a lot of Twitter traders and things like that you see on Twitter or social media, whatever. And a lot of them, I mean, honestly, man, I don't think I don't think a lot of them are profitable. I don't think many of them are profitable, to be honest, and it's like, such a weird space, man, because
it is.
You almost feel like you can't trust anybody. And like, I know, friends that I, hang out with in Discord or whatever, we talk. I do a Twitter space every morning with a bunch of friends of mine, and I know they're very profitable traders because we share P&Ls and things like that. We're talking price. Most of us are taking the same trades and things like that too. And it's just because we see price the same way, but there's a lot of cats out there, man. And it's like, there's no way. There's no way. It's like, so it's hard to even like trust who you're following. Like with your social media engagement. So like, for all you know, you might be following somebody and like, oh man, this guy's got like the holy grail. He's figured it out. And the guy hasn't even taken a payout yet, like, let alone get profitable for a month or, like a week. So it's like, you got to be really careful in the space too, because I know there's a lot of people that are trying to get to that point where they could get to that high level where they could get these big payouts and things like that, but they're just following the wrong people, man. It's like, again, bad ideas, bad advice. You know what I mean? You gotta like really, like, trading is, I always say it's mental. Like, there's a lot of mental things that you need to have going on in your head to get it right, to make yourself profitable. And like I said, the most profitable traders I know, they're very strong minds, and they have that mechanical rule-based system, and it's so rigid, man. They will not trade. A good friend of mine, I mean, he will not. Don't take like 6 trades a month, man. Right? And and it has to hit this criteria. And if it doesn't hit, he will not engage it at all. He'll sit there and watch the chart. And then he only look in that window of time of like New York Open and then the New York PM session. And then that's it. And if it doesn't show in that period of time, he is a completely 100% hands off. And I totally applaud him for his discipline, you know, and I'm at that point just from kind of associating with him and being around him and around those people, it's kind of elevated me to that point where I'm like, I'm not going to touch it today. You know, like yesterday, good example, like on AQ, just really crappy price apps. And you're like, why would I even want to touch this right now? Like, there's nothing here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no substance. So it's like, just knowing, like you said earlier, like knowing when not to trade, I think is probably like the most beneficial thing that anybody can like just like learn. Like knowing when not to engage price. Like, it's just not going to be in your favor. You're at low probability conditions. You know, high impact news coming out. You know, just stay outside, man. Go outside, touch grass, go hug your kid, go
Definitely
walk your dog, do something.
Yeah,
you know what
definitely.
I mean?
I think you have a great point too with social media. You know, on Twitter, it looks like 90% of traders are profitable and 10%, you know, are losing money. Whereas, you know, the data we've seen, it's the complete reverse. You know, 90% aren't profitable, and 10% on a good day are profitable, especially long term would be an optimistic number. So you're definitely right on the ball with that one. In terms of focusing only on A+ setups, I found too, it's a complete game changer. We'll see traders that just received their new funded account. In the email we send them with their login credentials, we say, you know what you're doing, but don't go crazy. You know, stay patient. Maybe take a day or two off before trading the account. Don't go crazy with it. And it's happened time and time again where we send up the account and within minutes, you know, they have 20 positions open, 30 positions. We've seen 50 positions open in the first day. And obviously we all know what ends up happening with the account. So it's so difficult to only take those A+ setups, but it makes the biggest difference. Speaking of trading, one of the questions that I wanted to bring up, since you're trading ICT, coming from somebody that really isn't very familiar with ICT, I'd be curious to hear, are there one or two resources that you would recommend for traders to look into when it comes to ICT? And are there other resources that you have found have made the biggest difference for you that traders should go check out?
Yeah, man. So, like when I was on the journey, and I always recommended this, like when I first started learning ICT, I was just going off of someone else's recommendations. And again, I didn't know if that person was profitable or not, but they're like, yeah, you have to go back to the very beginning and, you know, look at this series. And looking back on it, it's probably not a bad idea, right? But when you're trying to learn his stuff, it's very, very like advanced, and sometimes it's almost a little inundating, which is too much information, right? And especially in its delivery, sometimes, you know, it's just like I'll start talking about something and then, you know, get off the lesson completely and go on a rant for like 15 minutes. You know, it's just his personality. So trying to like weed through that, man, as you're trying to learn is very difficult for a lot of people. And I think what a lot of people do is they just want to find the easy answer, or like the easy, they want the sauce. Like they want to know what he's talking about in the video. So they'll just go to like somebody else who's not profitable or something on Twitter, and they'll like watch his 5-minute video on YouTube explaining order blocks. Like, oh yeah, man, I got this. And it's like,
right.
You don't understand, like, it's the intricacies, it's the stuff he's saying in between the 15-minute rants. He'll say something that's so applicable to that lesson that if you weren't paying attention and you didn't catch it, that 5-minute video means nothing, right? So, like, for me, it was understanding just the way he teaches in that manner and how important it was to really listen in, even through the difficulty when you're trying to really absorb it and you're just hearing all this other like noise, you know what I mean? But at the end, it's very sound logic. It's just the way it's delivered is a little all over the place. So when I first started, I was going through that process of looking at the older stuff. And then looking back on it, I was like, man, I just really wish I started with the 2022 mentorship, because it's in essence like the most simplest form of learning ICT, like the A plus setups, is in that 2022 mentorship. And it was designed in a way that the reason why he made it that way was because if his daughter ever one day wanted to learn how to trade, and say for some reason he was gone or, whatever, she would be able to look back on that mentorship series, and that was her starting point. So I always approached it from that point, because once I started the 2022 mentorship, it started to come together. So I usually tell people, if they're starting off, start with the 2022 mentorship, because it's like 40 videos, right? It's a long watch, but if you go through it a couple times, you really absorb it, and you'll get the most important, like, meat and potatoes of learning the concepts. And then from there, once you got that down, I usually tell people to go back into core content, and that's like from 2016 or 17. And it's basically like the building blocks of ICT that go a little more in depth as to why the 2022 model works. So I always tell people 2022 mentorship and then core content. And then if you really want to go a little bit further, there's a fella on Twitter, he goes by the name of MMXM Trader. And I'm not usually a big fan of people selling courses or reselling material, but I mean, it's a very, very, very good course. And the only one that was really worth my time was me purchasing it and going through the material. It just really helped me absorb the core content a lot easier. So those three things really helped me. And it was basically when I watched MMXM Trader's course around like springtime of this year, where I really things just started clicking, So I always tell people to go to those three avenues if they can. And that'll probably make the learning process a lot easier instead of going through, it feels like you're going backwards at times when you're just, when you don't have the right start all the way, you know what I mean? So you got to start from somewhere. Like, that's the easiest step, I think,
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Those are three very actionable resources that traders can look at. That's great. Joe, one of the last questions that I like to typically ask is, what's next? So, we got an amazing sense of your journey up to this point, 3 years, a lot of ups and downs. Now it seems, at least from an outsider's perspective, you're getting that consistency, but there's always room for improvement. So I'd love to hear, what's your goal, short-term, long-term, where you're at now, and, where you're really trying to get from here.
Yeah, so I think short-term, I'd like to focus more on, honestly, I'm more focused right now on the craft than the money. And I think that's the major separator is, over the course of last year, I just felt like I don't want to say trading out of desperation, but like, you get out of that point where you're like, I'm just a break-even trader. Like, every time I buy a challenge, I'll get the refund, or I'll get to maybe one payout, and then I go buy another one. So you're just kind of like net neutral. You're not really moving anywhere. So for me, it's like, I'm at the point now where I understand how important it is to just take those high probability setups, and I'm just like, I'm fine with waiting, dude. Like, I'll just wait, and that's where I want to get better at, is really focusing in on the waiting, right? Like, just being calm in kind of still waters and just waiting, kind of like stalking the prey. You know what I mean? Like, you're not just jumping on any little trade. Oh, there's a 15-minute market structure shit, I got to jump it. Like for me, it's drawing liquidity, high time frame, medium time frame down below time frame. When I get all those in a line together, that's when I want to execute. But just being of sound mind enough to be like, I'm just going to hold and wait for those one setups. And when they happen, I'm just going to make sure I go in with the proper amount of risk and have my levels that are predetermined to go forward in my favor. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where my plan is in the next, the rest of the year going into next year. I really want to focus in more on just being really consistent and not so much worried or focused on the financial aspect, because the financial aspect will come as a byproduct of the consistency and the discipline.
Absolutely. I love that. I think the traders that do the best long-term are those that focus on the inputs, what's within their control, aka the craft, becoming the best possible trader that they can, instead of just focusing on the Lambos, the Rolexes, getting those large payouts. So I think that's great. Joe, what is the best, or what are the best resources or places where somebody can follow you, connect with you, reach out if they want to? Where can people find you?
Yeah, man. So I'm always on Twitter. I'm always open. My DMs are always open. My handle on Twitter is @PowerfulJoeG. I respond to questions. I try to help people, man, because I understand how difficult the trading journey is. So, when I get people asking me, hey, man, what is this, or what do you see, or, things like that, I'm constantly posting charts and, my analysis of where I think price is likely to go, and trying to guide people in the right direction. So, I try to be help, to people that are trying to learn, because there's so many sharks out there, it's ridiculous. So, I never once wanted to even think about any sort of paid thing or paid mentorship. I'm not even at the level myself. I want to be at the level where I know, I don't want to say I know everything, but I want to be at the level where I'm confident in myself that I could say that I've researched every little turn there is on ICT's methodologies and stuff. I've consumed all of his stuff, and I'm in that guy's brain enough where I can operate at even a tenth of his level, right? I'm not there yet. I'll be the first I'm not there yet. I've got some really good thoughts. I got some stuff that works really good. But I'm not at the point yet where I'm like, yeah, you know what? Let me open up a mentorship. And even if I did, I wouldn't even want to charge anybody, man. I'm just not that kind of guy. So yeah, I am really accessible on Twitter. Like I said, I'm usually in, a friend of mine runs a space called the Morning Momentum. I usually speak on there. We usually talk price in the morning, kind of go over pre-market stuff, and it's a really good group of people there.
Okay,
awesome. So five people.
Yeah, we'll put the description down there in the video, so everybody will be able to find it and connect with you. Joe, this was a great chat. I really appreciate you sharing your journey. I think it's going to be a lot more valuable for traders that are struggling versus, those that just sell the dream of everything being easy. So I really, really appreciate you sharing everything today.
Yeah, no, man, it was great talking to you, man. And I really appreciate all the opportunities I've been given by your firm, and you guys there. Honestly, I've traded at a couple firms, and real quick before we go is the one thing I've noticed is there tends to be a lack of I don't want to say trader support, but anytime we've had contact with you or anything regarding payouts, or just hey, I need this, or blah blah blah, you've been right on the ball, really accessible, really easy to access. And I really appreciate that, and I think a lot of traders would really appreciate that, because it is kind of it feels like a dark alley space sometimes, where you're I don't know, is this place, gonna pay me, blah, blah, blah. And I can tell you 100%, you guys are perfect. So,
well, I really appreciate that.
Things.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. Yeah, we're not the biggest, we say that, but we're doing our best to give the best possible support. So we'd rather be a smaller firm that really helps traders and are there when they need help, versus just being another number of clients on the list. So I really appreciate you saying that.
You guys are great, man. I really appreciate it. So
thanks, Joe. Really appreciate it. Thank you again.